Yeah,
Uh,
okay. I think we've got enough people around to talk about it now. I'm Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner. I'm also Chair of the Tax and Finance Steering Committee for CCI, which is why I've had the unfortunate job of going through and understanding these bills. Um, and I'm just really happy that we're here today talking about 108, which is pretty simple, versus 303, which I think will drive everybody absolutely crazy if HH passes. But anyway, 108, when it was started by a Teller County commissioner and working through CCI. Basically, the idea behind this is just to allow um, those entities that collect property taxes that have debruced to float their mill levy anywhere underneath what they're authorized for, to allow them to say, with this huge increase in taxes that could come out because all of the assessments are a lot higher, that we could float our mill levy down so we don't have as big of a shock for our citizens, with the knowledge that they would be allowed, or it automatically goes back up to what the mill levy was prior to them floating it. So it's a temporary float down for 1 year. So if you're collecting 30 mills and 30 mills gives you more money than you need, the idea is you could float it down to 27, let's say, for this year. And then next year it would automatically go back up to 30, and you could then take action to float it down again. There are some references in the bill. I mean, I love talking about one-page bills. Usually I can go through and I can find things. There's a couple of references in the bills about a minimum mill levy. That is for school districts. It's called out in statute that school districts can't go below a certain mill levy, and that is part of the educational equalization, to where a school district that's smart and says, hey, we don't want to collect any taxes from our people, we'll get it all from the state, so they'll have to backfill us, can't do that. And then other than that, most of it is pretty straightforward. At this point, would the assessor care to chime in?
uh, sure. And I think you gave a great explanation of it. I think the motivation is districts will try to help out their citizens by lowering their mill levies. Uh, the assessor collects the mill levies and certifies them to the Board of County Commissioners. However, I should make it clear that we do not have any police authority over these. We can't determine if a district has violated Tabor revenue, or uh, perhaps a school district gone lower than what they should have. Um, we have to take the mill levies at face value and certify those. Uh, in some cases, we don't even get a mill levy from a district, and all we can do is submit the prior years. Uh, with that being said, I noticed in statute, I believe it's 27 mills is the bottom for the schools, unless their prior year was lower than that. But either way, that would set the base for them. And additionally, each governing board of these districts would have to revisit the lower mill levy each year. Otherwise, they would return to their original. And that is my basic understanding of it. And in conferring with our county attorney, that's his understanding as well.
Yep, there is one additional responsibility of the assessor, and that is if a district lowers their mill levy, they have to make note on the tax statement. I guess that would be more the treasurer. On the tax statement that goes out, they have to make note that there is a temporary reduction in that mill levy. I know Park County hasn't debruced, and that for us is kind of our standard. I mean, it's more or less printed at the bottom of all of ours because we can collect up to 24 mil, and we collect somewhere between 19 and 20 every year to keep us below our Tabor cap.
Right, and I know our treasurer in El Paso County has a notation for a temporary reduction by the county itself. At this point, we haven't noted any other reductions that may have occurred in other districts. And I believe that's more of a software issue for us that we need to solve.
Yeah, because that would be required under this one, that if a district does lower their mill levy, it does have to show up as an asterisk on the form with a saying it's a temporary reduction. Questions, Dan?
Yeah, is there any time limit on this or is it indefinite? So we have to revisit the lower mill levy annually. Do they have like a 10-year time limit on it, or we can go for as long as we want?
I believe you can go for as long as you want, as long as you lower it. I mean, the idea behind this was to give counties that have debruced more flexibility to, to say, we don't need this much money from our citizens, so we can lower it. In the past, they wouldn't lower it because once they lowered it, they couldn't put it back up. If you had debruced, you could float it as long as it was underneath what you had, the voters had approved. So this gives the counties that have debruced the flexibility that those of us that haven't had. The additional thing is, of course, we can't go up more than the Tabor limit where you guys can.
Well, and Commissioner, if I may, before we go back too far into questions,
Sure.
we also have Jacqueline Turway from the Municipal League. She is a legislative and policy advocate, so I kind of want to make sure that if she had anything that may answer a lot of questions before.
Okay. Well, why Jacqueline, do you have something you would like to add?
Yes, thank you so much.
Jacqueline,
and I
you're
appreciate you all including us in the conversation. One of the things I want to point out is that technically many jurisdictions already felt like they had the ability to do this, to reduce and float their mill levy and then go back up to the level. I know there was just questions around clarifying that you didn't have to hold a vote of the people with respect to Tabor for that purpose, which was the impetus, as you were talking about, for the bill. The other thing I want to mention is just during the legislative process, that temporary piece was a point of conversation, which is why the annual review is explicitly listed in the legislation, but there was no time limit to answer that other question as far as how long you could continue them annually. You just had to review it annually. So I hope that helps answer some of your questions, and I'm here if you have any others.
Thank you. Holly.
Oh, mine is, so Assessor Flucher, the next time we do assessments will be in 2024, right? So we'll have 2 years of this same assessment.
Correct. Well, our next reassessment will be 25. So yes, the values from this year should carry forward through 24 unless changed by an appeal.
Okay, yeah, so that was, these values were based on essentially last June of 2022. And that was when we were having people overbid on the houses, 40 to 50,000. And that's why we got these really high assessments, is because the market was just crazy back then.
Right. And that's why the tax estimate we had to provide was so outrageous, because the only mill levy we had available to us is the one set last fall. And that was based on a previous data gathering period, the 2019 base year, which ended and get my dates right, June of 2020.
Sure.
So if we, as a council, decided we wanted to lower our mill levy, what year is that affect is what we are really struggling to figure out. Affect the next assessment, or does it affect next year, or when does it go into play?
It affects this year. So the mill levy
does affect this year.
Yes, ma'am. So the mill levy would set this fall, will be used for the tax bill mailed in January of 24. Taxes are paid in arrears, so that tax bill is actually the 2023 taxes billable in 24.
Okay,
So when is your budget year? January to
yeah.
January. And that was the thing, my question is, I don't know when school district budget years are because those are the big mill levies on my taxes.
But
But
they aren't. Well, they could lower theirs also, but then they've got other requirements in statute as far as how far they can go on their mill levy.
mhm.
Yes, sure.
How are the special districts being notified of this, the metro districts,
I know there's,
fire districts, how are they being notified of this law?
I would,
The Special Districts Association was engaged in the lobbying efforts. And so they're very aware, and I'm sure they're sharing it with their membership as far as that they have this ability as well.
and I know that when we've responded as commissioner, when I've responded as a commissioner to a taxpayer, I've said, okay, El Paso County, we've not debruced. So we'll be temporarily lowering our mill levy again. And so you will see that Tabor spending cap come into play. But the big issue is, I said, you need to pull out your tax bill and you need to figure out every single special district you're in. So if you're paying up to 65 mills because you're in a new home and they're building roads, you need to figure out when that special district meets and go and talk to their board. And those are the things I've been telling people is you have to really almost become a tax expert and figure out, okay, when does my metro district, so Triview Metro, when does that meet? And because they have, I think, 35 mills. And when does this district meet? And how can we go and advocate for them to temporarily reduce their mill levy so that we don't have to pay quite so many taxes next year? And that becomes the harder situation. I mean, it's not, I can tell you right now, El Paso County, even if we had 400 people show up, we're going to lower the mill levy to what it needs to be to stay within our Tabor spending cap. And I can pretty much guarantee that right now. And but it's all of the special districts and the metro districts that help build the infrastructure and the water districts and the fire districts. A lot of the fire districts up in my commissioner district have debruced, except for Black Forest Fire. So they can go way up higher if they want to. And those are the ones you have to find out when they meet and go to their meetings.
yes, and to throw another wrench into the whole thing, you do have Proposition HH on the ballot, which is going to cause even more trouble for the assessors. If it passes, it will lower some mill levies, but it also creates more categories of property. So you'll have a residence, primary residence taxed at one rate and a secondary residence taxed at a higher rate. If that one passes. So there are a lot of things going on. And then the idea of meeting with your special districts or any taxing authority, if HH passes, it will say that that authority has to have a public meeting if they want to exceed the CPI increase. That is, if CPI says you can have this much, but your mill levy says you can have more, if you want that additional amount of money, you will have to have a public meeting, publicly noticed, and let everybody talk about why. And the board then would say, this is why we want to keep it. And then they have to take public comment on that. But that's something that we won't know until after November, the election, as to whether we have to do that. But I think the real purpose of this is just to allow flexibility for those that look at it and can say, as a board, we cannot justify taking this much money. We really don't need this to operate, so we can temporarily lower it. That means next year, and this is also what you have to look at, is this is set for this year and next year. So next year, you could look at it and say, well, we want to move our mill levy up a little higher because of inflation that hit. But you still don't necessarily have to go up to the full amount, or you could go up to the full amount the next year to cover the additional costs you have. Any other questions or any comments? Anybody with their eyes glazed over? Oh, yeah.
I just said it's still.
Yeah, it is very complicated. To me, the bigger question is not, am I going to hit my Tabor limit right now? That's not the bigger issue. Question to me, the bigger question is there some way to give the citizens a little bit of temporary tax relief in as many ways as we can? And I know I've asked our staff to look at that. Whether we're hitting our Tabor limit or not, which we may, but the citizens are needing some relief on their tax bills if we can do that. So, Jacqueline, is CML taking a position on HH, or are we just going to discuss it at the seminar next couple weeks?
So we, on the bill, Senate Bill 303, we took an opposed position. However, on HH, we don't have our position yet. That typically comes later in the summer when we have our board meeting about ballot initiatives.
Okay.
Yeah, CCI is the same. I think we took either an amend or an opposed on 303, and then we typically it's the same thing. It'll be September when we get together and take a position on ballot initiatives. So it is going to be interested in, I speak from a county that has been at its Tabor limit ever since Tabor went into effect, I believe. So we've been trying to live on just a cost of living increase every year, which means our government has been shrinking every year. There was an article in the Post, if you read it, about Jefferson County and Arapahoe County having trouble with it. It's not the counties that are the big issue if they are still under Tabor. I mean, we can't increase our taxes. We aren't going to be the big hit. It's everybody that has debruced, and there will be quite a lot of extra money coming in. And those are the ones that would have to look at whether they want to do that or not. But I don't think Teller County's debruced either. And so I think, PPACG, we may be all under the Tabor cap. So it's up to the municipalities and the special districts. I know at least 4 of my 5 fire districts have debruced. And one of the 2 water conservancy districts, I think the ambulance district has. So there's all kinds of mixes on how this is going to play out. And all but I think 2 school districts in the state of Colorado have debruced. One of them is in Routt County, and I'm not too sure where the other one is.
The other one is probably School District 38 Monument.
Okay.
Mark, can you tell me what is the mill levy for the city of Colorado Springs? Because this doesn't affect cities quite as much. Because cities are primarily sales tax based.
Right, but any little bit you can help.
Yeah.
Have it just a moment for you.
Yeah, Teller did debruce for.
Yeah, well, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Park County did the same thing. Otherwise, you can't go after any grants
Right.
from the state because it all then counts as your tax. So you debruce for money that comes in that is not directly attributable to property taxes.
Okay, hang on.
Colorado Springs is 3.9.
9,
basically,
yeah.
not including their road and bridge share.
Yeah, so they're about 4 mills. And so Yolanda, that gives you, since most of yours is from the sales tax for your city budget, it does give you a chance to offer some flexibility for whatever. And I have no idea what in the city budget they pay for with the property tax, but it does give you some flexibility there on the property tax to lower it a little bit if you wanted to. Oh yeah, the metro districts and the special districts are the hard ones. So, and then of course the areas that went up the most this year, Black Forest went up 56%. And It was, Black Forest was the bad one. I think they were the top, so. Whereas in previous years, it was Security Whitefield.
Yeah, well,
So-
and that's, you take a look at Park County, where I live in Park County, we're a third, a third, a third. A third for the fire district, a third for the school district, and a third for the county. You get down around Guffey or Lake George, and it's only 17% for the fire district, which, they look at it, they're running 5 fire stations on a $260,000 budget, so it's a bit of a challenge for them, but again, it's a tool. If you feel you need to try to give some help for your constituents on a large increase in tax, but then that's only if you have debruced or you can keep any other revenue.
Mark, if someone missed the deadline for reevaluation?
Appeals.
Appeals, thank you. Are they just out of luck, or is there a
No, they're-
window?
they have a couple of alternatives. There's another appeal process called petitioning for abatement of taxes. Once taxes are billed in 24 for 23, they can file that petition to seek a lower value. They can also wait till the appeal period in 24, and as long as there's no changes to the property, the 23 value should match the 24 value based on case law that's about 20 years old. And so when we adjust the 24 appeal, we will automatically do an abatement for 23. But that's hard for homeowners if their mortgage company has already changed their escrow amount, because now they're stuck another year with that higher escrow until they get the next change. So,
Yeah, and
they do get another chance, another bite at the apple, so to speak.
yeah, and there's also a program that the state offers where you, if you can't pay the additional tax or need help, you can have the state backfill the increase or some of your taxes. And it's a program, and it will go live on January 1st, supposedly. But then, of course, the state requires they got to get all of the tax statements in from everybody, which if HH passes won't be due until the 15th. But it provides the ability for a resident to go in and defer some of their property taxes. What happens is the state opens up basically an account, and they have a lien then on the property for the amount that they're backfilling the county. It's a good way if you have something bad happen and you just need a little help, you can go in and the state will do that. The interest rate, I believe, is really low. I think it's 1 or 2% that you would pay on that money. And it's like a loan you don't have to pay back until you sell the house. The state can't take any action against anybody because it's not due until the house is sold. Now, you can pay it back early if you want, or you can wait. So there's that program that's available. I would go to the state website after January because it should be up and running then. If you go to the treasurer's site, there will be a link there. And I believe the treasurer is planning on publishing some information out there for people that are caught in that bind that I don't have the money. The thing is, you would need to work with your mortgage company if you're doing it in escrow to make sure that they then get a revised statement from the taxing authority, so they don't overpay based on that. Any other questions, comments?
I'll make a comment about HH. I know it's off topic, but something we'll need to make senior citizens aware of is even if they already have the homestead exemption, our county attorneys are saying the way the proposition's written, they will have to reapply for the new version of the senior homestead exemption, or they will lose it.
Yeah,
So it'd
that's,
be owner occupied senior homestead classification.
yeah, it's, my understanding of that is they basically are not going to fund the constitutional homestead exemption. They're going to fund this homestead exemption and make it so it's portable. So if you have to move, you can carry it with you, which they can't do because the homestead exemption is in the Constitution saying you have to live there 10 years. This basically says you have to live in Colorado for 10 consecutive years, and you have to own property, but it's not going to tie it to one house, which is why then you'll end up having to reapply to get this one because it's a totally different program.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're just gonna have to make sure we educate everybody on.
If HH passes, you probably should reapply immediately.
I would say so, because
Yeah.
the deadline changes to March 15th.
Yeah, and that's something that we've pushed at PPACG for years, was to make the homestead exemption portable, and they stuck that in there to make the bill all more. It is a little bit of a bait and switch on HH, so I'll put my political hat on. And then I'll take it off. But that was something they put in there to make it, a little bit more encouraging to vote for. But it's just making property taxes more complex. We've already complex as it is.
Well, yeah, HH is going to put a lot of work on the backs of the assessors because.
Yeah, Mark, you probably need to start lobbying for an extra employee now.
Yes. My assessor already has. She said, if HH passes, I am going to need somebody else. Because part of what HH does is it requires an affidavit from every homeowner saying that this is my primary residence. So you get taxed at that lower rate. So you've got your assessor staff now that's going to have to gather all of this stuff, take a look and make sure they think it's accurate, and then make that adjustment to where they have the lower assessment rate than if it's not your primary residence. So the assessors really, I think they took the brunt of the extra work on this.
But they've given us plenty of time to implement it.
Oh yeah, you've got a month.
And just so you know, we almost had our new assessor and treasurer software ready to deploy.
We're still counting on August, but
Yeah.
the good thing is it's a company that serves about 11 counties. So they've been rewriting the software this entire time, trying to keep up with these bills.
Okay,
So if
any
you're a
other?
municipality and you belong to CML, Jacqueline's your contact person. Jacqueline, can you, I don't know how we get our contact info out to everybody. Okay, is there somebody from CCI that counties would contact with questions?
Jenny would be the one. Jenny Pinju. Or if anybody here wants to, they can send me a note. I've spent far too long in the depths of this. So. Okay. Seeing no other questions, no other. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us and helping to explain it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.